Welcome back to another episode of Know Your Legacy. I'm your host, V, and today's guest is Brandon Farbstein. Brandon is a TEDx speaker, empowerment coach, activist, and author. His latest book is called 10 Feet Tall, and he's achieved all of that just by the age of 19. I know we've been trying to do this for a little while now, man, so I appreciate you being here, Brandon.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
Oh, most definitely. So I want to start by asking you, what does the world look like from 3'9"?
It's a good question. To give you a funny answer, there's a lot of asses that you see because, I mean, when you think about it, most people on average are like 6 foot, maybe a little bit under that. So I'm, 3'9's not too far half of that. So it's interesting, but obviously I'm living in a world that isn't built for somebody like me. So there are many challenges, but I've learned to not get overwhelmed by all of the things that I can't do. And as cliche as it sounds, the more focus that I put into the things that I excel at and that I know I have a lot of greatness behind, it doesn't seem like I have many problems anymore.
Yeah, I think that's an important point you touch on, because most people tend to focus on the things that are missing or things that they're not good at, and the things they're
Right.
lacking. And you seem to focus on your strengths and the things that you excel at, and hence the reason you've got to where you are now by 19. You built that level of momentum. So what would you say are the things that you focused on and felt like, this is what I need to focus my energy on?
So the way that I kind of got introduced to the space that I'm in now with the speaking and all of the things that I'm doing was through my TEDx talk that I gave when I was 15. And that was the very first talk that I'd given. And it also was the first time that I shared my story and I was vulnerable. And it really was that one moment that things just started to click in my mind saying, wow, there's immense power in sharing my story and being genuine and authentic to the world. And I also saw how much of a gift I had to be able to connect with 2,000 strangers in a room and captivate them and leave them with a new perspective. And I honestly got the bug then. And professionally, I've been doing this for about 3 years now.
That's amazing that, how far you've come in the space of 3 years. But how did you end up on the TEDx stage?
It's a cool story with this. I was traveling with my family to visit relatives. So we were at the airport and a woman came up to me. She saw the mobility device that I was riding, which is this badass bright yellow Segway, and it draws a lot of attention. So I was used to it, people just making conversation, wanting to know about me and what I use it for, etc. And so this was no exception. This woman ended up being on my flights. We talked for over 45 minutes, and she ended up being one of the original TEDx organizers. So way back when, like over 15 years ago, when TEDx was nowhere close to the platform that it is now, she was one of the original people. So at first I thought it was a coincidence and that I was just at the right place at the right time. But genuinely what I've discovered is that when we manifest and when we put things out into the universe, somehow in some way, the universe finds the possibilities for that to appear in your life, whether it be opportunities or people or whatever it is for you. The power of manifestation is so real. And I specifically remember talking to my mom a few months before that, and I said, one day I would love to give a talk on the TEDx stage, but I never thought that one day would turn into today.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's crazy. That's a real life example right there for people that are listening about, manifesting your dreams into reality. So at what point did you say to your mom and have that conversation to the point where you're sitting on the plane having that conversation? I mean, what was happening in that gap and what was that timeline like?
Well, the first 15 years of my life before I discovered my passion and my purpose, I honestly felt invisible. I am somebody that, as you can imagine, has dealt with tons and tons of adversity every single day, all throughout my life. And I didn't have any use of being able to use what I've been given and take the adversity and do something with it. So essentially, it was just all piling on. And I tried to end my life when I was 11 years old, and just the depression and mental health challenges that I continued having to just jump through those hoops and find the solutions that worked for me. Um, but genuinely, I am so grateful for all of that experience that I had when I was younger, because I learned the most valuable lessons that we can in this lifetime. And without every obstacle and every piece of pain, I wouldn't be who I am today. So I guess a challenge that I have for everybody listening: instead of blaming people for all of the hurt that they've caused you, why don't you blame them for all the blessings that they've given you, like your resilience and your courage and your absolute passion for life? I don't find that a mistake. And when you're able to do that, you take your power back. And that is so freeing.
That's powerful, because you then end up looking at every scenario as empowering. Like there's positivity and meaning to extract from every scenario that you're in, and
Yeah.
I guess then you're training your brain to survive and to thrive in those conditions moving forward, whatever it might be that you face later on down the line, a month from now, a decade from now, whatever it might be. So that's a powerful way to think about it. And was there some type of coaching that you had, something that you read, videos? Like, how did you end up thinking that way? Because most people, even though they're listening to this right now, and they've probably listened to hundreds of videos about this before, because of the power of social media and so many people sharing that, but it doesn't hit home.
Right.
They don't actually live it. Where did you feel like that is sunk in for me, and I actually need to make this happen now, otherwise my life's not going to go in the right direction?
Couple different things. Number one, I didn't have that realization, honestly, up until recently. I used to carry all of the anger and all of the hurt that people gave me. And it's not necessarily that I didn't forgive them, but I didn't allow myself to move on. And I was still getting stuck in all these holes that just kept, you know, putting those feelings back in my head. And that's a stupidly toxic cycle to get into. So because of the proximity that I've had to Tony Robbins, who is definitely the number one person that I aspire to be like, because of the amount of influence and impact he's made on the world, he's really taught me that. And again, you could listen a million times to a certain message or to inspiration or motivation, but until you start implementing it, it's not going to mean anything. And you can't expect things to change if you don't change anything for yourself, of course. So it truly is through the experience that I've had and learning a little thing here and there each time, and just having all of that kind of add up to all of the lessons and the mindset that I have today.
When you look back at the years leading up to like the TEDx stage, what are some of the memories that come up for you when you think about like your childhood, around the age of, when you were conscious of like, oh, actually I am different, like I actually don't look like the other kids. What are some of the things that come up for you around that?
Um, Definitely a lot of darkness, because number one, I didn't have many friends. Um, and it was really difficult for me to feel as if I was loved or supported or had strength around me. And also, the bullying really started when I was probably 11 or 12. And I discovered just how different I was. And I resented everything. I resented myself and my family and God and the universe. And all I wanted to do was to not deal with what I had to deal with every day. Um, and that's really a horrible place to be, when you feel like everything that has led up to the moment that you're in right now is a mistake and doesn't mean anything. And I wish it was as easy as snapping a finger to tell you what your purpose is and why you're here. For some people, they discover it early on, like I did. For others, it takes years and years of being in this world in order to find what lights you up. But stop focusing on all of these overwhelming what if questions, like what if I fail, or what if I don't find love, or what if I'm not enough. There are always going to be those in every situation, but you have the choice to step out of that and to not let yourself go down this rabbit hole of darkness and negativity. And it just slows you down, and it doesn't let you be continuing your momentum. And what's the point of that, truly?
If you were to, because I'm just, as you were talking, I was just thinking of the people out there in the world right now who may or may not listen to this, but are going through something similar to when you were like 11, 12. And they may be much older in their life, but feeling, how you were feeling, because they're so different, or they feel like they can't handle it. And the what if questions is all they're thinking about. If you were to take yourself
Yeah.
back as you are now to 11 or 12, at that moment where you felt like, I'd rather just not deal with any of this, what would you, how would you handle that differently? Like, what would you say to him?
It's a really good question. I One of the biggest things that I've also learned from Tony Robbins is how, I don't want to say easy, but how simple it is to break somebody's state. And that's their mental state of whatever mind they're in. So whether it's a mind of despair or hopelessness or depression or anger, how you can do something to get them out of it so that they are receptive to what you have to say and to help get themselves out of that hole. So that's probably something that I would really try and do now that I know that tool and that skill. Um, but some of the things that I would say to myself in that place would be, I would remind myself how much strength and resilience that I had, because it was me who got through the things that I got through. Nobody stepped in front of me and acted as the plow, getting everything out of the way. It was all me. And what we have to remind ourselves is we literally have been unstoppable to get to where we are right now. We don't give ourselves enough credit, and we're so hard on ourselves for no reason. Yeah, it's good to try and be a perfectionist and to produce the best quality product of yourself that you can, but you are not going to be perfect, because there is nothing in this world that is perfect. And you have to realize that you are somebody that belongs here, or else you wouldn't be here time and time again.
Yeah, that's powerful. Just to know that you matter, like you have a place in this world. It's for us to find out what that is, and then to go and share it with whoever we feel we're here to share it with. I actually read something interesting based on what you said, and it's basic but profound as well. And the guy was talking about in the book. He said you're a born winner, and then he went on to explain what that means, because we've heard that quote so many times in some phrase or another. But he was saying, like, there's hundreds of millions of sperm racing to the egg. You won. So
Yeah,
you,
yeah,
you're born a winner. Like, that's it. Like, you're already ahead.
true.
So if you come at it with that mindset, you've been given a place. So that's it. Like, you've started with a place compared to the hundreds of millions who didn't. And so, yeah, I want to know your thoughts on that, because it seems like you've adopted that mindset, whether it's consciously or unconsciously.
Yeah, totally. I've actually never thought about that specific analogy, but I really like that. But it's not necessarily, I think that whole like winning mentality is misconstrued, because unfortunately, our society, we're all competing against each other. There are very few people that I've encountered in my lifetime that genuinely want to support the people around them. So I'm not saying that those are rare, but I would say there are more people trying to get on top and to get ahead of everybody around you than there are those who genuinely want you to succeed in your own way and you to be fulfilled. So I just think going back to my last point with giving yourself credit, you also need to give yourself credit for what you've accomplished too. It doesn't have to be anything massive. There's no reason that you should be comparing yourself to anybody else, because you have your own set of strengths and talents and weaknesses, and that person has their own set. And each person needs to use it in the best way possible, of course, but just understand what you've done to get here and be proud of that.
Yeah, it's important to acknowledge, how far we've come, how, whatever small wins that might be. I guess that's where the confidence is built, in knowing that actually I brought myself here, so I can take myself to wherever I need to go. What would you say is one of your proudest achievements or proudest things that you've done so far in the years that you've been doing what you're doing?
Accomplishment wise, I would say the one that I'm most proud of right now is the one that I got from Instagram a couple of months ago in their under 19 awards, where they choose the 19 most influential teens under the age of 19 around the world. And it still blows my mind that I'm considered that. I need to take my own advice sometimes, and I'll be like fully transparent. I don't give myself enough credit, not in a way that's like egotistical, because obviously that's like the most unproductive thing that you can do, but just saying like, holy shit, look at where you were and look at where you are. That's incredible. And so that was really special, and that's something that still I'm over the moon about. But honestly, for me, the most acknowledgement of the fact that I'm doing what I need to be doing is the hundreds and hundreds of messages I get on a daily basis, whether it be from people who follow me, or I came to their school, or they heard me speak at a conference, or they've seen a video. To know that I impact people in a way that shifts their perspective and that gives them a new lens to look at their life and the world around them with, like that's just the most amazing thing for me. The thing that fills me up the most is knowing that who I am right now is who I needed when I was at my darkest place. And to serve in that role for other people, I am just so immensely grateful for having the platform that I do, for all the different reasons that people look up to me. But like, I just don't want to be your inspiration because I have a condition or because I'm different. I think that's bullshit. I want to be your inspiration because of how I choose to live my life and what I do every single day to make sure that I'm living in my truth and I'm being authentic and I'm living my life. I'm not having anybody else dictate the life that I'm going to have.
I'm glad you touched on that last point, because I was going to ask you, when you speak to most people, whether it be in crowds or one-to-one, what's the number one message or energy that you want to, or that you're trying to transfer to them?
Definitely empowerment, because the thing with motivational or inspirational speakers, whatever you want to call them, us, you could give all the motivation that you want, but unless you're doing something tangible that every single human being, no matter what their background or their challenges are, they can pick up on some aspect of that and apply it to their own life to be a little bit better than they were. So empowerment for me is definitely the most important trait that I try and leave on my audience members, but even the people that consume my content online. Because when you're empowered to step in your truth and to really own the person that you are, it's not just accepting it, and it's not just saying, this is who I am, okay. It's saying, this is who I am, now what? What can I do to use this to help the people around me? And it could be as simple as sending a text message to a friend saying that you're thinking about them and that you love them. Something that small means the world to the person receiving it. And if we can do more of that, empowering ourselves enough to lift the people around us up, the world becomes such an extraordinary place. And the problems that you think you had, they somehow become lesser and lesser, because truly the secret to living is giving, as Tony Robbins says.
Yeah, I love that, and I've tried to live by that. As soon as I heard it, I was like, you know what, it makes sense, because you get a sense of the thing is, you get a sense of fulfillment, and that's the selfish part of it, I guess. But the second thing is what you said about how it's going to impact the other person. Is when you send that text, for example, you might think it's very minor because you don't hold it as, you know, high regard in your mind, but to the other person, you have no idea emotionally or spiritually where they are. So for them to receive that little bit of love, it's like, wow, okay, someone is thinking of me. I do matter.
Yeah.
And we don't realize that.
And
Yeah, exactly. Go on.
that, I mean, I said this before, but I just want to make sure it's drilled into your mind. That one little thing that takes seconds of your time literally can change everything for that person. You never know what somebody's experiencing and how dark their mind is in that moment. So it literally could be your action, whether it's positive or negative, that either stops them from going over the edge or is all that they need to kind of jump from it. So that's a message that I think the young people of today, aka my generation, really needs to understand, that we have immense power, especially with this. And if we don't use it properly, it is going to turn into a weapon of mass destruction.
For those who are listening, when he said this, he picked up his phone, and you know, everyone has a smartphone nowadays. And so with social media, specifically speaking, the reason we can access social media is because we've got a smartphone, but it allows us access to an audience across the globe. Like, just like me and you, I've never met you in person, but we've spoken
Right.
online, we've become friends, we've jumped on here, and we're sharing wisdom with people that we may not even ever meet in our lifetime. But the power of using technology for a positive benefit is there for all of us, and it's just whether we choose to do it. And you've done it on Instagram, hence the accolade that came, you know, on the back of it, for I'm sure many reasons, but one of which because you shared it on an online platform to and affected so many hundreds of thousands of people. So I just want people to, you know, really think about that, because you how long have you been sharing on Instagram?
Um, to the level that I've been, probably for about 2 years. Um, like where I really took it professionally instead of just using it as a tool to see what my friends were doing and to share like pictures of my dog or whatever. You know, there's still some of that, of course. You have to have a balance, but something else with social media that I have really learned is we curate 100% of the content that we see. Yes, you could see an ad for something that pisses you off politically or whatever it might be, and you don't have control over that necessarily, but you have control over every person that you're following. And if there is anybody that doesn't specifically add something to your life, I'm talking laughter or humor or love or inspiration, like whatever it is, as long as it's productive, leave them on. But anybody that is in your friends list or that you're following that is constantly negative, that's spreading their own toxicity onto others, aka you, no wonder why you're feeling so down, you're feeling so stressed out, and you're angry all the time. That is a huge component of it. And that's something that I have to remind myself constantly. Whenever I'm seeing one of my friends or somebody that I follow just constantly complaining, I have enough of that in my life. You know, all of us have enough negativity. We don't need more bullshit that's constantly filling our heads 24/7. So press that unfollow button, press delete. I promise you that one little thing that you can do is going to make an enormous impact on your mood.
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on that, because we've got control, to a quite a high extent, we've got control over what we see on our phone, and it's what we allow into our mind. And we don't realize that something like social media is something we see every single day. And so we're conditioning our mind. It might just be 5 minutes scrolling, but add 5 minutes over 7 days times 4 times 12,
Yes.
and you conditioning your mind seeing the same old types of information. And I would go a step further for me personally and say, it's some people might just think, oh, it's images, it's not a big deal, like, funny meme or whatever it might be, or something,
Right.
a negative quote, but it's energy that's being transferred, because the energy that's put into making that is then being transferred into you. And so it's a domino effect. So because you mentioned, actually, I want to go back a little bit, and you said about bullying around 10, 11, and I'm just assuming that since then it's not as much because you're not in school anymore, but on social media, I'm sure you've had to face some of that, whether it's DM or publicly in the comments. How do you deal with that? And then also, like, judgment generally, from someone in your perspective, anyone would be right in saying, oh, he has a reason to feel fear of judgment. So it's all right. If he feels it, it's fine. But what about me? Like,
Right.
I feel it, and I feel like I'm a regular person. So coming from
Yeah.
someone in your position who's managed to handle it really well mentally, how would you then help someone else manage it in their day-to-day life?
That's a really good question, and I'm glad you asked that. Um, I'm going to be fully transparent with you and let you know that, especially in the winter time, my depression kind of starts to seep in again, just from that lack of sunlight, and I just don't get like enough energy from being outside, of course. So the way that I handle the hate and the harassment that I get every single day is different. And to give context to all of you, we are recording this in the winter right now. So it's definitely been a struggle for me. It always will be. I have seasonal affective disorder, so winter depressions. But a couple things that I like to do. Number one is I try and acknowledge in an empathetic way what life must be like for the person sending me that. If somebody takes the time to make an entire Instagram account filled with images of me, posting the most derogatory and hateful things that you can say to another human being, how much pain must that person be in? And I'm not saying that takes the edge off of things, because for every single human being, words hurt. We could act like we let things roll off and that we don't feel these emotions. That may be what we're telling ourselves, but unconsciously, you're just burying things deep, deep, deep. And if you never address it, it's going to erupt in your life in a way that uh, is not going to be beneficial at all. So, um, it's that, number one. And number two, I try and surround myself with as much uplifting energy as I can. And I'm somebody that, because of the profession that I have, I spend so much time on my phone or on my computer. And it's just so easy to get overwhelmed by the amount of hate. And you don't even need to be the direct target of it to be overwhelmed by it. Just seeing it and feeling that energy, like you mentioned before, V, it's like, it just is such an easy thing to let fill your mind. And by the time that you know it, all of your mind and all of your conscious is filled up with this, and you have no room for happiness or for gratitude or for love. So couple things in that. Number one, if you are unable to help yourself, how can you expect to help other people? I'm not saying be selfish and like put everything else on pause, but you just have to know it's okay to not be okay. And whatever your problems are, you're not broken. You just need to tweak some things to get better results. So change the outlook is something that is really important to me. Um, but yeah, that empathy part, man, is just the biggest factor for all of us. I truly believe that's number one, where the most genuine human connections lie, when you both can have empathy for each other. And number two, you aren't stuck down by other people's actions anymore, because you have that empathy, because you have that perspective of, I just can't imagine how much they are suffering right now, and maybe there's some way that I can help eliminate that suffering for that person. That's something that I try and do all the time. Whenever I get like a really bad message from somebody, to the extent of you should kill yourself or you're the ugliest person I've ever seen. Again, like you can't look over that. That doesn't not hurt. But I try and reach out to them in a way that is understanding, that is genuine, because words hurt, and that's empathetic. And I say, um, you probably are in a bad place right now. I get it. I used to do the same thing. I lashed out at people and I took my own anger out on the world around me, and it ended up making me feel so much worse about myself. So I just ask what I can do to help. And sometimes I'm able to change that person's journey in a huge way. And sometimes they don't accept my words. But I believe in karma as well. We shouldn't need to get revenge, but we should have faith that the universe has a way to teach the lessons that all of us need to learn.
I fully resonate with that. And as you were talking, actually, I thought of a similar story that I'd heard someone tell me a few days ago. So I went to an acupuncturist who's actually British, but he's a Buddhist. So he's not a typical British Christian, but he's a Buddhist. And so I was intrigued. I said, he was in his 70s, and he was, I said, what brought you into Buddhism? As he was putting in the needles and stuff. And he said, it's a funny story, actually. When he was in his 20s, he met a Tibetan man. And the guy was just full of joy. He said the kindness just poured out of his eyes. He didn't even have to speak. He just had a sense of groundedness and peace. And as he was talking and helping, it was like a community center type of place. And the guy must have asked him, "Oh, do you not want to go back home, or will you be visiting back home?" And he started talking, and he said, "Oh, I think he said that it was the Chinese. Yeah, if I remember correctly, he said the Chinese killed my whole family. I have no one to go back to." And then he started laughing, and the acupuncturist Julian said to me, he wasn't just laughing from here. He was laughing like it was a belly laugh. And then he said, "Why did he laugh? Like, why are you laughing so genuinely? Like, you actually find it funny?" And he said, "Because I have empathy for those that were in a place of violence to kill, because it's going to come back around to them. And I just feel for them, because when it's their turn, they're going to have to suffer in some shape or form. And I just pray for them to heal their mental state, because what state are they in if they're in a state to kill someone else's family?" And he was like, from that point, he was like, if he's able to laugh at something like that and find it in himself to do prayers for those who killed, then I want to learn what he's got. And then he became Buddhist, and he said, ever since then, I've loved it. I'm just learning about life so much. And it seems like you've adopted that through your experience. Again, whether it's conscious or unconscious, like, I love the way that you approach it, because you'd never allow yourself to fall too far down, because you're always keeping a perspective.
Right.
So, I mean, I think so far, everything that you've said is, for those who are listening, it's going to help them change their perspective, regardless of what they're going through. It's something to think about. And I want to move into the book a little bit, because I'm sure you've covered some of that stuff in there. It's called 10 Feet Tall, for those who are listening and may not have read it yet. How did you come up with the name?
So if you guys haven't already felt this, my personality does not match with my size, with my physical size. So the way that people describe me after they hear me get off a stage is that they quickly forgot about my size, and they felt as if I was 10 feet tall. So that's it's just a sentiment to not being defined by the definition that you think you are, of your appearance or your shortcomings, or just all these things that we think define us, and to elevate your mindset to feel like you are empowered enough to be 10 feet tall. It's an amazing place to be. And the book it's a really cool mix of my story and some of the messages that we've already covered, but not just about how I was able to own who I am and change the world with it, but how all of us can step into our truth and not just accept, but do something with the hand of cards that we've been given.
Well, and what was the process of writing the book? I mean, like, did it just start? Was it natural because you thought, okay, I'm going through this journey, I want to make a note of it as I'm going, because you were journaling? Like, what did that process look like?
Yeah, I've always struggled with focusing enough to just sit at my computer and do one thing. So I had somebody take the words that I spoke and create the manuscript of the book with it. So it's cool. Essentially, what we did was for about 5 months, I met with this editor for about 3 hours at a time, and she just asked me all these questions. Or I just said, open your recorder on your phone, and I'm just going to talk. And it just transformed into what it is. And I'm a firm believer in bringing people on that excel at something. And so it's a nice example of what I did with the book. I brought in that woman, I brought in an editor, a graphic designer, all who are really good at their craft, because I don't want perfection, but I want a product that I'm very proud of and that will help a lot of people. And that's exactly what the book is.
Most definitely, yeah, and you're a living example of all the messages that we've spoken about because of the way that you're managing your life. So, um, what was the most I guess fun or interesting part of that journey in terms of writing the book?
Well, at first, it was an overwhelming feat trying to think about every single person that would read it, what messages they need. Um, but then I stepped back into the speaker mode that I'm in, where I can't give every message that every person that is in front of me needs to hear. I can only try and imagine what life is like in their shoes, what some of their challenges are, because we are all connected. We're all human beings and we have the same challenges, obviously on a very basic level. Um, so that's kind of what I did. And the learning curve that I experienced from all aspects of it has been huge. And it's definitely a great thing to do early on in your career so that you can take those lessons and translate them into other things that you're able to accomplish.
When you look back and reflect now of the years that you were at school going through education, was speaking and writing something that came naturally to you, or like is it something that you found out later on down the line? Like now that you've had time to sort of look back at those last 5 or 6 years, what really stood out to you, or was it a subject that like math or science, or like what was that process like?
Um, Speaking definitely has always been natural for me because I come from an acting background. So as a kid, I performed in tons of musicals and plays, and I was pretty talented at that. And so that obviously lays a huge foundation in having that stage presence and having the ability to try and connect with every single person in that audience. But with the writing side, definitely not. I honestly hated every aspect of school because of I mean, as you can imagine, because of the horrible experience that I had growing up with all the bullying. And so I resented everything associated with school as well. So writing and reading and uh, things like that, I just didn't want to be a part of. But then I just changed my frame of mind into getting out of that victim mentality and letting all those people continue to hurt me and realize I'm not that person anymore. I don't need to be stuck in that place. And if I want to continue my momentum, I have to do things differently. So that's definitely been really beneficial in giving me the focus to really sit down and do what is most important to me and not listening to what the universe, I'm sorry, listening to what society wants of me. There are always going to be people that think that they know the answers and what you should be doing, but those people aren't you. And you need to be in the driver's seat of your life, not let anybody else have the power to control your experience, because
Mm.
that's just not fair.
Yeah, most definitely. I think because then it takes away from what you're supposed to be doing on this planet, because it's almost like you're being dictated by others. And in that time, you could be busy living your authentic self, giving to the world in some shape or form that's only made for
Right.
you. So what does, obviously you lived a very different life than being in school, going through the bullying, and it seemed like a much darker period. And now it seems like you're coming out of that tunnel and being able to share quite confidently with people. So what does a day in the life look like now? Because I know you travel with your mom as well, don't you?
Yeah, I do. So my mom is actually my business partner. She works for me as my operations manager. And I must say, that is one of the coolest things because it's brought our bond and our relationship to a whole new level, and we get to adventure and change the world together. So it's really special. Um, the really interesting part about the journey that I'm on is that there are no 2 days that are similar at all. So one day or even one week, I can go from doing nothing but writing emails and working on content and things on my computer. Then the next week, I have over 50 things that I need to do, whether it's events or interviews or appointments or whatever. So if you're somebody that craves stability and structure, don't do anything close to what I'm
Yeah.
doing. Um, but it's every single day is an adventure, and I just need to be open to what that day is going to bring and just be deliberate with my time and my energy. I don't necessarily have to be productive every moment. I believe being productive also is sitting on the couch and watching Netflix and spending an hour on FaceTime with your friend. Um, but you just need to balance all the areas of your life. You shouldn't just excel in one aspect of things. Figure out ways to level up in all the different components of your life. There's always room for improvement.
Most definitely. What would you say you're most grateful for now?
I'm most grateful that I have a mission to wake up to every single day. Um, that's my purpose, and it is what lights me up. And without that, I really can't imagine where I would be. And that again just makes me so grateful for all of the life experience that I've had. Um, I'm not a victim to it. I am the victor from it. And nothing is a mistake. And I believe everybody is brought onto our path for a reason. And we experience all the different things that come before us for a reason as well. And sometimes it takes you getting to your darkest place in order to realize that. But once you get out of it and you are the unstoppable, resilient, courageous lion that you truly are at your soul, life is truly full of limitless potential.
And you're a living example of that. As you just said, like every day is different, every week is different. I'm sure every month's been different as well, but based on the opportunities that are opening up, just because you had the courage to step into doing what you were supposed to do. Is there anything that you do daily in terms of like when you wake up, first few hours of your day, like do you spend it consciously on doing certain activities, and then the last part of your day as well? Because for me, I've found speaking to so many people and doing it myself that if you focus your attention on certain things in the morning, for example, not being on the phone and writing out stuff or affirmations, whatever it might be, you've set the intention or the energy and the presence for the day. And so it goes in the right direction, and then you end it in a certain specific way as well. So I'm just curious, like if there's
Totally.
anything that you do.
So again, with keeping of being genuine, that's something that I'm still improving on. I've tried a bunch of different things that I sucked at, and like I'm just somebody that is really terrible with keeping discipline and keeping schedule. So, like I mentioned before, I try to bring people into my team that really can help me develop that more. So, for example, I just brought on this incredible 16-year-old intern that helps me out with my scheduling and with doing things like briefings and just getting all the nitty gritty details that I am not great in. And that helps me so immensely. So it doesn't have to be professionally, even personally. Having people that hold you accountable and hold you to a higher standard, I think is so important.
Did you ever think, because you just mentioned about the 16-year-old, did you ever think you'd be able to employ or help or nurture someone else in that way just a few years ago?
Never, never. And an example of that, I just spoke at a middle school. So I know you're in the UK. That's ages 12 to 15. So grade 6 to 8. And I spoke at their career day. So when they had people coming in to talk about their jobs and whatnot, they hired me as the keynote speaker. And I just got such a kick out of that because here I am. I'm the least bit from conventional. I'm a 19-year-old who doesn't go to college, that is pursuing his dream and whatnot. And to show these kids that you don't need to be conventional and that it's great to be different, and your differentiator is your superpower, and all these things is just so special to me. And I'm so passionate about helping as many young people as I can, especially right now because I'm so relatable and it's like I'm a peer of theirs, so that the impact that I have just reaches a much deeper level than somebody who is 10, 20, 30 years older than them.
I know in that regard, you class yourself as an activist in that space because you can relate and because you've been there and done that at very similar time frame to what they're experiencing. What's the if you were to boil it down to one lesson, what would be the lesson that you're trying to impart on that age group?
Ooh, it would still be under that empowerment umbrella, but it would be you have the power to influence and impact other people around you. And why it's so important for them to realize that, because unfortunately, with social media and technology being so rampant in our lives, because we've grown up with it since we were babies, and we just have to remember that every action has a consequence and that there is somebody on the other side of that screen, and your one message can be all that it takes for somebody to end their life or hurt somebody else. So power and understanding it is what I'm really trying to get across.
Mm-hmm. And just to get into the last few questions, and one that I ask everyone is if you were to write one statement and put it in a time capsule for generations from now to read, what would the one statement be from you?
Oh man, that's really hard. Um, I would say this is like really hard for me. Um, I would say you were put here for a reason, and everything that you are going through is preparing you for who you need to become.
That is just sums up the conversation we've had so far, so it's crazy because I think so many people need to hear that, because they get stuck in what they're experiencing right now, without having the vision of where is this going to lead me eventually? How am I going to become better because of this, you know? So I love that. And if there was one quote or book or resource that you could share with anyone right now, like, you know, press of one button and it goes out to everyone across the planet, what would that one thing be?
To be honest, there hasn't been one book, but I would say just personal development in general. Um, it could be unique to each person, whether it be listening to podcasts or to attending events and seminars. Um, just doing something to improve yourself a little bit every single day is so important. And if only that was taught in schools instead of the unnecessary BS that is forced down kids' throats, man, the world would be such a better place.
Yeah, definitely. I wish I'd learned what I know now, you know, sooner, because there's so many things they don't teach us in
Yeah,
school that if they did, it would change the way, you know, kids handle life, real life, once they leave school. So just the
absolutely.
last question then, with everything that you've gone through and all the adventures that you're yet to have, once you're at your final day, what's the legacy you hope to leave behind?
The legacy that I want to leave behind is I want to be an example of not what somebody born with challenges that made something for himself out of that, but I want to be an example of when you choose to own who you are and you're able to use it to impact the world around you, you will have a magnificent life. And I hope that every day I continue to remember that and to follow my own advice, because it's really easy to give other people the answers about what they should do, but it's even harder to tell yourself what you should be doing. And so I'm somebody that constantly needs those reminders, and that's okay. Um, but I just hope to show people what the human potential really is made of.
Listen, you're going through your journey and your process of self-development, self-improvement and discovery. But the difference is you're not afraid to share it. And that's where, you know, you can really truly label yourself as an empowerment individual and an activist, because you're not afraid to share the imperfections, or let's not call it imperfections, the things that most people are afraid to talk about. And so I just want to thank you for,
Right.
you know, taking the time to share, being vulnerable, being honest, being courageous. And I just want you to share, you know, with people where they can follow you if they want to find out more about you, your book, your journey, videos, resources, whatever it might be.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like we talked about before, Instagram is my favorite platform. So my username is just my last name at Farbstein. I'm also on Facebook, and my website is just brandonfarbstein.com. If you're interested in the book, that is on Amazon. So wherever you are in the world, just go to your country's Amazon. It's both an ebook and a paperback. So just search either my name or 10 Feet Tall.
I love that, man. Well, no, thank you again. And you've only been in the journey for a few years, but I'm looking forward to doing another episode once you're, you know, a year, 2 years, 3 years down the line, to see how far you go.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on.